What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use the code BBDNVR for 15% off your first order. You heard that right. We got a presenting sponsor again for the show. Feeling big time. Feeling good about that. Feeling good about the growth we've had within the DNVR Rams community over the last couple of years. Big shout out to everybody in the audience. That wouldn't be possible without all of you guys. Again, check that out, brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off your first order. Their collegiate line is sick. They've got all kinds of really neat CSU hats on there. You're going to be seeing me rock those quite a bit this upcoming fall. So definitely go check all that out. They've got a lot of great golf apparel and just, leisure wear, all kinds of stuff. It's a really cool site, and I am stoked to be partnered with them. Today is Big Brothers Big Sisters Day within the ALLCITY network. We have been raising funds for them all week, but we're really making a big push today. You can donate to an incredible cause at bbs.org/allcity. We're kind of doing a little competition within the network, so we're trying to make up some ground on Philly and Chicago and some of those other cities. But more importantly than that, it's just an opportunity to be a part of a really cool cause and to make a legitimate difference within your community. If you have the means to donate, I implore you to do so. Again, you can find that at bbs.org/allcity. I also would ask you, if you're interested, to check out Becoming a Big, because there are a ton of kids in our community that could, use some guidance, that could use just somebody to be there in their corner. And this is a really cool opportunity that I'm really proud that DNVR and ALLCITY are a part of. I just wanted to make sure that we got those in at the beginning here. I also would like to shout out our newsletter, which has very much been revamped. I write that every day, so if you're a fan of my show, if you like my sports commentary, please check that out. You can subscribe for free, get it sent to your inbox every morning. You can also look at the web version at newsletter.thednvr.com. Today we wrote about the Rockies and why I wish they could get out of the NL West. The Rockies are actually pretty fun right now over the last week or so. The season's been a disaster. But the last couple of nights have been decent viewing. Going for a sweep today going for a 4-game sweep, I should say, for the first time since I believe 2019. It's insane how far that franchise has fallen. But again, check that out. Write about all things Colorado sports. Basically everything you need to know about the Colorado sports world in your inbox every morning in less than 5 minutes. It's always short, to the point, not trying to drag on and on or anything like that. But again, please check that out. It's really important to us. We've got a fun show for you guys today. We're going to be kind of all over the place, to be honest. We're going to talk CSU hoops observations. We were fortunate enough to attend an open practice yesterday. Really appreciative of CSU PR for making this happen. Ryan Pfeiffer is incredible to work with. There have been times in the past where my relationship with PR at CSU has been icy at best. There have been times where it's been great, and we've been lucky these last couple of years to have a really good relationship with the school. Certainly appreciate that opportunity. If you watch the local news, I'm sure you saw a clip or two. It was one of the 2 or 3 times this year that the Denver News Brigade will actually make the trek, up to Fort Collins. I try not to be petty about that kind of stuff, but admittedly, it does always make me roll my eyes a little bit. Kevin and I, Tyler King, some of those people, Steve Ivey was there. Shout out to Swole. Some of those people that are there more regularly, we have a great rapport. It's just like the pressers go so much smoother, and then you get all these guys from TV up there just asking the silliest questions you've ever heard, and it gets under my skin a little bit. But that said, I know from CSU standpoint, it's nice to have that exposure. You want the other outlets to cover them. It just makes my job in particular a little bit more annoying. We'll talk Texas State to the Pac-12 at the end. We'll get into a recruiting update. CSU most recently picked up a commit from Atticus Tillman, top 20 local recruit for the state. We'll talk about him in a little bit. I had been kind of teasing his commitment for a while, talked about him being somebody I expected to be on board. I will talk about what we like about his game, as well as an important visit this weekend. CSU actually hosting the top local recruit in the state this weekend. They're one of the schools that have been on him now for a couple of years, so it would be a huge addition for the program if they were able to pull that off. Again, though, we are going to start hoops. We are going to talk about what we saw at yesterday's practice. I'll play a clip of Ali talking about Nique Clifford, all that fun stuff. But first things first, and I had received some questions about this on Twitter when I posted a little bit of video. Yes, CSU men's basketball was practicing in the rec center yesterday instead of the indoor facility or Moby. They got displaced for a dance camp, apparently, which I'll be honest, optically, that's not a great look for a school that has a program that's trying to make its fourth NCAA tournament in a 5-year span. It just feels really small time to me. And I understand that scheduling conflicts are going to happen. It's a give and take process, even within your own athletic department, of trying to balance the space between the different Olympic sports programs. I understand all that. It's one thing for CSU to get relocated because volleyball needs the gym. It's another thing for like 9 girls to be a part of a dance camp. And I recognize that I am ignorant to a lot of the day-to-day processes, within the department and stuff. I'm sure there's logistical things that just go right over my head. I'm sure there's a business element of this. Like, I'm sure CSU makes decent money on these types of camps. You probably do have to do some of that. I get all of that. But it can't be at the expense of your basketball program. And they were good sports about it. Like, Ali's not the kind of guy to go up to the media and throw a fit like a lot of coaches would, make passive aggressive comments about the conditions. And honestly speaking, it's not that big of a deal. Like, practicing in the rec in the summer, there's not a lot of kids there. It's legitimately a bigger space than the Denver Nuggets practice facility, but it's just the optics of it. The lighting's not great in there. From a communication standpoint, it's tougher in there. It's just not an ideal scenario. Not a good look. I know that admin, in particular, these last couple of years, John Weber, Amy Parsons, they've been all in on the future of CSU men's basketball, and I love that. To me, this kind of felt like a little bit of the old way of life kind of still seeping through the cracks, and that's gonna happen. You're gonna update your practices as you can. I mean, like, as an athletic department, like, you're going to modernize and change the way you do things as you go. But it's just really incredible what Niko Medved was able to do with this program, despite a lot of hurdles and despite the school really not being all in on basketball until the very end of his tenure. Joe Parker, very much football oriented, was kind of more along the lines of, yeah, we'll take the success when it comes, but you can leave if you don't want to be here. Obviously, CSU really made an effort to keep Niko these last couple of years. We've seen a lot of success. You just want to continue to increase your investment, in the program. You want to continue to support it every way possible and not make it a situation where they're accomplishing all these incredible feats despite all of the obstacles in the way. I would just really like to see less of this stuff moving forward, especially if you're serious about being a big time college basketball program. I mean, I don't think Gonzaga is moving their practice for a dance camp. I don't think maybe San Diego State, because they're Mountain West like us, but I think you get the point. It just was something that I wanted to touch on before we got into it. I don't think it's a huge deal or anything like that. I'm sure there are some people that work at CSU that are going to hear this and be like, you have no idea what you're talking about. That's probably true. But optically speaking, it's just not a good look, for your basketball program, especially one that's had as much success as CSU has had in the recent years. And if you want to hang on to quality coaches, if you want players to be serious, about CSU basketball and be stoked about their situation here, eliminating little things like this, little inconveniences along the way, that's a great start, along with, renovating Moby and, just increased access to all kinds of, training and just the resources you need to be successful would be the simplest way to put that. But as far as the observations from the day go, I don't want to get too carried away here. It's day one in the summer that we were able to see. They had a couple of practices before that, but obviously they're not exactly hitting the ground running at this stage of the campaign. We don't know who the starting five is going to be or anything like that. Like, you can take somewhat of an educated guess, but really this was more just kind of a feel the temperature type practice, get a look at how these guys look physically, from an eye test standpoint, what type of skill are they flashing? Just giving you kind of an idea of what you have to work with. And I've talked a lot about expectations still being relatively high despite the turnover, despite the coaching change. I mean, I wrote about it the other day. If you're a diehard, please go check that out. But Ali basically said the same thing in his presser yesterday, and that's that the standard hasn't changed at all. The standard is to compete and to go to NCAA tournaments and push for conference championships, and there's no reason that CSU can't continue to do that. It's most certainly going to be a lot of moving parts. You've got so many new pieces. I think 10 new players on the roster this year. That was the case last year too, though, and I think it'll be kind of a similar ordeal where the team you see in late February is going to be far superior than the team you see in November. Now, I don't necessarily forecast the exact same struggles that CSU had last year in the non-conference slate. Hopefully you're able to pull out some of those more premier matchups, avoid the UC Riverside type losses so that you're not in a scenario where you've got to win 10 straight to close the regular season and win the conference tournament just to get into the NCAA tournament like they did a year ago. But it is going to be a process because you do have a lot of moving parts. You have so many new pieces. I mean, you've got 12 guys, assumingly, that are going to kind of be a part of that rotation, but really, like 3 to 4 of those guys are not going to be playing the types of roles that they're probably capable of playing and would like to play. It's a good problem to have, but it is going to be a little bit of a process trying to iron out these rotations and figure out who's best suited to play with who. And it's not exactly an offensive system you can just pick up day one and hit the ground running. You need an intelligent point guard. You need bigs that are versatile and are able to pass and shoot and put the ball on the floor and be impactful from the top of the key, but can play with their back to the basket, that can step out to the corner a little bit, stretch the floor. I mean, there's a lot of different elements of this offense that take some time, and you see it, like you look back at Joel Scott, it took him a little bit, but once he figured out he was a stud. It took Nique a while to figure out this system. Even Isaiah, even Roddy, like the greats, it takes some time. If you think that just because you brought in some 4-stars and former 4-stars from the high school ranks that all of a sudden, game one, this team is going to be Sweet 16 ready, you're probably going to be disappointed. But I do think that there is most certainly reason for optimism going into the year. And from an eye test standpoint, and again, it is far too early to get carried away. I think there's a lot to like about this roster. In particular, I love that they were able to bring back Mbemba, Jorgensen, and Japa. Obviously, losing Kyan Evans to UNC is a bummer. You would have loved to hang on to Croc. Just having more continuity would have been that much more of a strength for this team in year one under Ali. But I think guards, particularly guards that can shoot the ball, they're always going to want to play in the system. It's kind of like receivers with Norvell and football. I don't really think you're going to have a ton of trouble, recruiting the guard spots. A true point guard is tough to land, but you're always going to be able to land shooters. It's tough to find bigs that are well-rounded enough and versatile enough to make an impact in this complicated offensive system. And to have Mbemba back going into year 3, somebody who's been there, done that, it's huge, like you don't have to teach him what to do. His impact, I mean, you can see it just from the win-loss record. Like, he's not your prototypical 5 out there, which is what he basically plays despite being, essentially like 6'6". But CSU's 19-3 over the last 2 seasons when he plays 18 or more minutes. They're 27-5 when he plays 15 or more minutes. Like, that's a large enough sample size that you can draw the conclusion of CSU is a far better team when Mbemba is out on the floor, and it's because of the way his physicality impacts the matchup. His ability to hold off some of those bigger guys also benefits other people on the glass. Like Nique is a dominant rebounder. It's probably his biggest selling point as an NBA prospect. But when you have, Mbemba doing some of that dirty work down low and clearing space for Nique to go up and get the ball, it's a strong selling point. And I think it's going to be a very similar role for him with different guys. We're going to keep talking about this. I'll give some thoughts on the freshmen, on the transfers, all of that. Let's take a quick breather real quick. Let's shout out a couple of our partners before I get too wonky here from a timing standpoint, but then we'll keep this conversation rolling. Are you looking for banking that plays at your pace? Whether you're tailgating, grabbing halftime snacks, or catching the game from the couch, First Bank is in your corner. With their secure, easy-to-use mobile banking app, you can check your balance with the tab for stadium nachos, stay on top of your money anytime, anywhere. It's like having a financial MVP in your pocket. Here's the play that pays. You can earn $300 when you open a new First Bank checking account. Use it to score tickets to Nuggets, to the Avalanche, maybe put down a deposit on season tickets for CSU. First Bank makes managing your money feel like a win. No games, just solid tools to help you stay in control right from your phone. If you're ready to take your banking game to the next level, head to efirstbank.com/bonus. That's efirstbank.com/bonus. Certain restrictions and requirements to apply. Member FDIC. All right. Just like your favorite team needs a home court advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. We've all been in a big box store where you're looking for help. I actually experienced this. This is a completely different product. I was in Walmart the other day. We're trying to get a spark plug for a lawnmower. I asked 4 different employees. Nobody even knew what a spark plug was. And it was just one of those situations like, oh man, I get it. You guys aren't mechanics. You are working in the auto section though. And I think flooring is very similar. Like you can go to one of those big box stores. Maybe they know what they're talking about in the flooring section. Maybe they don't. With Empire Today, they have people, this is all that they do. Flooring is their life. They live and breathe it, and they will be there with you every step of the way. It's just a whole different ball game. Their flooring experts bring the showroom right to your home. Schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DNVR listeners can get a $350 discount when using the promo code DNVR. Yes, you heard that right. A $350 discount with the code DNVR. Restrictions do apply. Visit EmpireToday/DNVR for details. All right. Shout out to my good friend Steve Ivey in the Toyota chat. He says, it's official. Nique got the green room invite. I posted about that on Twitter this morning. Ali had told us that they would be in New York for the draft. Assumed that meant he would be part of the green room, but that speaks to how he's valued in what's actually a pretty deep prospect class. So we're going to talk about Nique and his NBA status, kind of where the latest mocks have him. Last week, it was obviously all Orlando. Then Orlando makes the big Desmond Bane trade. That kind of changes some things. We'll talk about who he's frequently being picked to now. We'll get into, we'll play a clip of Ali kind of talking about Nique's growth and just what a cool story is. I'm actually going to write about that as well. But going back to what we were talking about, Mbemba, it's just good to see him out there, guys. Like he has practiced so little these last couple of years. He looked agile. He was moving well. I think it's always going to be kind of a touch and go process with him. The hip thing has just been lingering. I don't think that's just going to go away or anything like that. But shoot, man, we watched him practice for 2 hours yesterday. I don't think I've seen Mbemba practice for 2 hours in the last year and a half. The more that they can have him out there, the more that they can have his experience, his presence. I just think it's going to be a win for CSU. I think he's going to take a bigger vocal leadership role this year. I saw him a couple of times pulling guys ahead, just explaining little nuances. Hey, we set the back screen here, you do this. But if the defense slides here, you're going to do this. We've heard from Pasquarelli, from some of these newcomers, and they've talked about like how big it is to have him. He's basically an extension of the coaching staff. And I think you've seen somebody really come into his own these last couple of years, kind of a shy kid, like can be, but we've seen him come out of that shell. And I just think his return for CSU is going to be understated within the Mountain West. I think it's going to be one of the more significant returns in the league. Like Utah State getting Falslev, that's huge. San Diego State getting both Guath and Bird to come back. Those are huge wins for San Diego State. Probably not quite on that level, but I mean, when you look at the numbers and you see their 27-5 over the last 32 games in which he's played 15 or more minutes. Like, clearly that is a big win for CSU. And more than anything, I just think being able to lean on somebody who's comfortable within the system and playing at CSU is going to be a strength early on in the year, because it's very likely going to be, 4 new starters plus Mbemba, like 9 of your 12 guys in a potential rotation are going to be new. There's a lot of unknown with this team, but Mbemba is the consistency you can depend on. And obviously health is going to be a big factor with him, but I just think that he's in line for a big year. He told me yesterday, one of the biggest reasons he wanted to come back is the comfort level he has at CSU. He trusts these coaches. He trusts Ali. He feels happy at CSU, in this community. The people have been there for him. And I just thought that was cool. I thought that kind of speaks to why it made sense to hire a coach like Ali in the first place. And, I've talked a lot about Mbemba, but I think Jorgensen being back is big. I think Joppa being back is big as well. And it just takes time to adjust to the spacing and the pacing as a 4 or a 5 in this system. And when you have guys that combined for like 1,300 minutes last year, knowing that you're not going to have to, teach them the every step of the way, I just think that's going to be big for CSU with so many moving parts. And all those guys have kind of flashed in their own way. Mbemba, he's definitely the biggest, strongest guy. But Jorgensen's flashed some significant offensive skill as a true freshman. He had some big shots too, for a lack of a better term, not trying to be crass, but he has some balls on him. Like, there were moments in tight games on the road, big conference matchups the Rams needed to win, and guys were hurt or dealing with foul trouble. And Jorgensen came in there. His confidence hadn't wavered at all, despite, kind of losing his role as a starter. He started a little bit in non-conference slate, played less as the season went on. That's typically how that goes for freshmen. But he was always ready for the moment. And I think as he gets bigger and stronger, as he gets more comfortable on the defensive side, like, his ceiling is pretty high as a player, particularly offensively. Just the way he can pass the ball, the way he can shoot it, what he does for you from a spacing standpoint is huge. Joppa just brings a different level of size and physicality than we're accustomed to. I think about the possibilities of if Joppa, for instance, were to make a big leap this year, and maybe he's coming off the bench, but let's say he's playing 20 plus minutes a night. I mean, if you had him at the 5 and, somebody like Kerry Booth on the floor at the 3 or the 4, I mean, that's a level of size, athleticism, explosiveness that CSU has not typically had in my lifetime, at least. And you're going to have to be patient with all these guys. A lot of these guys have strong suits. They all have, reasons for why you would play them. They're all flawed players in their own right as well. These aren't 5-star NBA ready guys, which makes sense. But I really do feel like those 3 in particular coming back as bigs was such a big win for CSU. And they all look like they're, poised to make a leap this year. I saw Joppa shooting the ball, looked really good. Jorgensen's always had that skill, but he looked good yesterday. I'm excited about these guys and what they can be. I mentioned him a second ago, but I do want to add, just for context, because I mentioned Booth and how he just looks different out there. I mean, I was talking with Steve Ivey yesterday, and he pointed out, like, other than Guat at San Diego State, there's just probably nobody in the league. I think it was Steve that said that. Might have been JP, but regardless, he looks different out there than some of the other guys, we've seen in the program. And he's very much raw still. He's going to take time to develop behind the scenes. This is a guy who just has not played very much basketball in the last 3 years. He's still young. But what you love about him, you can't teach that frame. You can't teach that type of explosiveness. He had a transition dunk where it's a 2-handed jam. He comes down the lane and throws it down, and you're just like, shit. That is not something we have seen. Roddy could throw down, Nique. Like, they've had guys that can dunk. But he felt very San Diego State. I always come back to that comparison. They always just seemingly have guys in the post that are just kind of at a different caliber athletically than the rest of the league. And Kerry Booth is that type of player. Now, he's got a long ways to grow. It's going to take a while, until he's comfortable within that system. We just mentioned all the different responsibility that comes with that. It's going to take him a while. So if you think he's going to be starting, day one, I think you're going to be disappointed. I think it's more likely he plays early on in the season than Joppa did last year. Like, I don't think it's going to be one of those where he's basically not in the rotation and then all of a sudden he's playing a decent role at the end. Like I do think we'll see him consistently, and hopefully, as he gets more comfortable, as he gains more experience, we see him make a leap as the season goes on, because his ceiling is very high. Like his ceiling is probably higher than anybody on the teams. The question is what is your floor going to be? How quickly can you adjust to this offensive system? How comfortable can you be? And more importantly, like, can you be somebody who can create? I think, catch and shoot threes, opportunities to cut, transition opportunities where you can go to the hoop. Like those are all ways he can make an impact for you right now. What's it going to look like when, the offense breaks down and you got to create your own look? Is he somebody who can put the ball on the floor and create something from the mid-range like Nique did these last couple of years? I think there's a lot of areas where he's going to need to make a pretty big leap, if he wants to be an NBA player someday. And obviously that's why he's here, right? Like he could have chased the flash again, but he's already done that. He's gone to Penn State. He's gone to Notre Dame, wanted, what came with, being at a bigger program. And I get that. There's a lot of benefits of playing for those big schools, but the downside is you don't always end up in a situation that's best for your future. And the one thing that CSU can sell, no, they don't have the flashiest facilities. No, they're not Jordan Brand. You're rocking Under Armour sneakers, which have improved, but they're still Under Armour. What you can sell is a realistic path to development, and you have proof of concept. It's not theoretical. Kevin Lytle's going to have a cool piece coming out. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say too much. But on that 2019 recruiting class, which, included Deshaun Thomas, James Moores, Roddy Stevens, and John Tonje, that's 5 professional basketball players, a couple overseas and 3 in the NBA. Despite having no proof of concept, they had to basically sell what it could be. And those guys ended up proving the coaches right, which was huge, moving forward, because now you can point to people and say, look what Roddy did. He came here, he had Big Ten offers. He comes to CSU. He ends up being a top 25 pick and a conference player of the year, goes to the league in less than 4 years. Isaiah Stevens, undersized, obviously, but he goes down as the greatest player in program history, has records that are going to be untouchable at CSU and really in the league, because there aren't going to be guys that get to play that 5th COVID year like he did. Tonje had one offer out of high school other than CSU. It was Nebraska Omaha, and he was a freaking All-American this year. That's development. That's coaching. And if you're somebody like Kerry Booth, like, this is the perfect spot for you, right? An opportunity for you to grow as a player, to work with coaches who care about you and your development as a player, but also as a person. They're going to have your back when things get tough, because it is going to get tough. He's somebody that had really high aspirations. His dad was an NBA GM. He was a 4 or 5 star prospect coming out of school, went to a big prep academy, has all of these expectations that are, around him. And it's tough to live up to that. Now he's already in a spot where it hasn't quite worked out the way that he hoped. If it works out at CSU, it'll be a testament to his maturity, very, very much like what we could say about Nique Clifford. And that's somebody who had to come in and put the work in. Things didn't pan out at CU the way that he hoped, but he always had the raw athleticism. The frame was there. It was a great canvas to work with, but you had to take your time and put in the work. He did it. Now he's going to be a potential lottery pick, at least a top 25 pick, I can say pretty confidently at this point. I don't want to create unrealistic expectations for Kerry Booth. I don't want it to be a situation where anytime somebody was a highly touted high school player that went to a high major and it didn't work out, they're going to come to CSU and they're always going to pan out like Nique did. That's probably going to be more of the outlier than the norm. In general, I would say I'm more willing to bet on the guys that are proven at a lower level and are making the leap up than I am to bank on somebody who hasn't figured it out all of a sudden putting it together, even if it is against quote unquote lesser competition. But the potential is there. Like Kerry Booth, physically, athletically, he has some intangibles that you just can't coach. And I think he has the right mentality. He sought out CSU from the beginning. Like he was always planning on coming here because he wanted a chance to develop. So I think he has the right mindset. It's just going to be, can you stick with that as things get tough? And if you're not necessarily playing a ton right away, or maybe you're not playing well, like, can you battle through that and can you figure it out and potentially, find a groove this year, and like next year you make a big leap and now all of a sudden you're in the NBA draft combo very similarly to Nique. But I just want us to be very realistic, because I already know when that night one lineup gets released. And I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen between now and then from an injury standpoint that could change this. But on paper, he's not a starter right now. He's probably not even a top 8 guy in the rotation. I do think he's going to play. I don't think you bring somebody like him in with the intentions of just sitting him on the bench. But I do want people to be realistic, and I want them to understand that this is going to be a process, not necessarily an instance of him coming in and just being dominant right off of the bat. We're going to keep this going. I'm going to give a couple more observations. We're going to get into Nique Clifford's draft stock. We'll talk CSU football recruiting. If we have time at the end, I'll give a couple of thoughts on Texas State to the Pac-12, which seems to be a done deal, or will be any day now. But we might save that for tomorrow, depending on how long we go here. We're going to take a quick break, shout out a couple of partners, and then I'll keep the observations from basketball practice rolling. We've all been there. You're one leg away from your parlay hitting. You're already thinking about how you're going to spend your winnings. Ooh, I'm going to treat my girl to a dinner tonight. Ooh, I'm going to grab myself some new sneakers. And then what happens? That last leg doesn't hit. It all falls apart. You feel like a fool for even thinking it was a good bet in the first place. The Hall of Fame app is hoping to help you prevent some of that. This is not your buddy's group chat full of hot takes. Hey, I got this great bet. Why don't you tell me? This is a full analytics engine. The Hall of Fame app gives you access to advanced stats, historical data, powerful tools to help you bet smarter. It's built for the everyday sports fan, so it's not complicated. It's easy to use, really intuitive. And what's cool is, no matter what you're into, baseball, the NBA, NFL, NHL, even college sports, the app gives you beautiful charts, clean visuals, real insight, not hype. They believe anything the books know, you should know too. Your parlays don't have to be dumb bets. With Hall of Fame, they aren't. Got a 4.9 rating in the App Store. Over 6,000 five-star reviews. It's safe to say Hall of Fame has already helped a lot of people bet smarter. For a limited time, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, they also get 50% off their first month when they use the code DNVR at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame app on iOS or Android. Visit hofbets.com, enter the code DNVR, and you'll be all set. I also would like to shout out Mando. Mando's a men's deodorant brand, hyper-focused on keeping every aspect of a man's body smelling fresh and clean. They mean everybody, or they mean every part of the body, and they do mean everybody. They're going to help you keep smelling fresh, your pits, your balls, your butt, your grundle, all your stink zones. They've got great scents. They're geared towards men, bourbon leather, Cloverwood, Mount Fuji, and pro sport. It's smelly season. It's going to be like 100 degrees today and tomorrow. Don't ruin everybody else's vibe with your smelly self. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. Comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, plus 2 free products of your choice. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers are going to get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That comes out to over 40% off your starter pack. Use the code DNVR at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. All right, I appreciate everybody that's rocking live with us this morning. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up on YouTube, if you want to leave a question, comment, etc., throw it in the Toyota chat. If I don't respond right away, we'll star it, come back to it at the end. Just a couple of more observations here, and again, I don't want to get too carried away. Jace Butler is somebody who's kind of a wild card to me. CSU recruited him heavy out of high school, 4-star prospect, ends up at Washington. Plays a little bit early, doesn't play much at the end of the year. Was looking for a place to re-find his confidence, honestly. Didn't get an opportunity to develop with the Huskies. Didn't shoot the ball well as a freshman, but the potential is there. His ceiling is really high. Another guy who, like Kerry Booth, just needs time to play. And he's somebody you need to be patient with. The battle for minutes, 2 through 4 especially, I think is going to be interesting. You got Pasquarelli, Jace Butler, the transfer additions, but how does Darnez Slater factor into that equation? He made some plays yesterday. Jevin Muniz, somebody that can play like kind of the 3 or the 4 for you, depending on how things go. Kerry Booth as well. Booth more of a 4 frame, but probably the game of a 3, if we're being honest. I don't mind that anyways, just because it gives you an opportunity to get somebody like Augie at the 4, or Jorgensen, and then you can have Mbemba, Japa, and at the 5. Like, you're going to have some versatility with the types of lineups you're going to be able to throw out there. But Jace Butler, he's somebody who can shoot the hell out of the 3 ball if he gets hot. I could very much see him being a big addition for CSU. Rex Steiner,
somebody I'll have to see a lot more of, probably going to be the starting point guard. Although it wouldn't shock me if it ends up being close to a 50-50 split with him and JoJo McIver, the standout freshman out of Texas. Maybe it ends up being more like 60-40, even 65-35. But I do think McIver is going to play. McIver. Still not 100% on that. Asked a couple of people yesterday, didn't get any clarity on it either. He passes the eye test. I'll say that. Like, I don't want to create, again, unrealistic expectations anytime you throw out a comparison with the name Isaiah Stevens in it. Like, you got to proceed with caution, and I want to. I will say, and it's not just because he's a Texas kid also, but stylistically, some of his mannerisms, the way he's able to manipulate space, the angles, his body control, there's a lot that gives Isaiah Stevens vibes. And I do think that he is somebody, much like Zay, who is far wiser beyond his years than most people at that age. He's going to be tough to hang on to. Like, him being a 4-year player like Isaiah was, that would be a massive win for CSU, because I think when he pops, he's going to have a lot of big offers, a lot of people in those DMs, which kind of frustrating, obviously, if you're CSU. But, it is what it is. Rex Steiner's got a nice looking jumper. I'm excited to see how he can grow as a facilitator. He needs to be more efficient, needs to cut down the turnovers a little bit. But he's a good athlete. He's got a good looking jumper. Like I said, I think he's going to be a very natural fit. He's got Mike Bibby biceps, man. He's jacked. And that's not surprising, given all his family history. His dad's a wrestling legend. His dad and his uncle's cousin, Braun Breaker, one of the biggest wrestlers in the world. The concept of being like a 6'1" D1 starting point guard who's shredded and being the runt in your family, that's a little bit funny to me. I hope he likes talking about all the wrestling stuff. I think that'd be kind of fun to get into. But I'm intrigued by him. I'm really high on Pasquarelli. I've talked about that from the beginning. I think him and Augie and Muniz, I think they're going to be just plug and play. Like, those guys, they're veterans, which is huge. They look the part physically. That's the case with this whole team. I mean, from an eye test standpoint, physically, athletically, explosively, top to bottom, this roster is just on another level from what CSU used to be. I just think they've been opened up to a different caliber of transfer and prospect, and that comes with success. But I think Pasquarelli, somebody day one, can be like a 15 points a game for you type guy. He's going to shoot the ball at a high level. Augie can do everything. Like, I think there's going to be instances where he's playing a 4 or maybe even like a de facto 5, like if you were going real small, but he can run the point for you at times. Like, he's going to be able to do a little bit of everything. He can put the ball on the floor. He can shoot the ball. His handle is impressive. Don't let the lack of name brand fool you. Don't get too caught up in, this guy came from the Big Ten or whatever, and this guy, he's only from Marist. I'm telling you, Pasquarelli can hoop, and I'm telling you, Augie and Muniz, those were big-time additions who had significant interest in the portal. UNM made a huge run at Muniz. Like, I feel like I've not talked about him quite as much, but just his length, what he's going to bring to you on the glass, the ability to get some of those boards, that Nique was scooping up by himself these last couple of years. I'm really excited about those three. They definitely passed the test. Docker Tedeschi, again, somebody who I haven't mentioned a lot just because he's going to redshirt. I like what I see. I think his ceiling is pretty high. He's an intriguing prospect. He can shoot the ball. Got to put on like 30 pounds. I was talking to some of the strength staff, and they're like, he's going to be our best friend this summer. He's going to be on that Nico Carvacho routine where they have eaten multiple PB&Js and a couple of Chick-fil-A sandwiches every day. But I like what they've got working with this roster here. And I think, all things considered, what they were able to put together here as a staff is pretty dang impressive, all things considered. So I'm cautiously pretty optimistic about CSU hoops going into this season. And again, I don't think the standard has really changed. I think the expectation on a yearly basis at this point is going to be a tournament team. Now, you're obviously not going to make the tournament every year, but I think we're at a point now where it's stopped, or it should have stopped being a surprise, and should kind of be what we're striving for on a year-to-year basis, because there's no reason from a resources standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, that CSU can't be
like a San Diego State, like a Gonzaga, even a Boise State's had great success. One of the more underrated coaches, I would say, in Leon Rice. Bit of a whiner, but had a lot of success. After practice, we were able to catch up with Ali Farokhmanesh. I'm going to get some written content out. I'm not going to play the whole clip. I'm probably not even going to share the whole clip on social just because there's a lot of background noise, just being honest. They were still shooting. There's people bouncing the basketballs everywhere, people having conversations. I'm working on getting a better kind of Rode mic for my phone for some of these types of setups, but there's a lot going on, and I thought playing like 8 minutes of that on the show might have been overkill. But we do have a clip of Ali Farokhmanesh talking about Nique Clifford that I'm going to play here in just a second. If you missed it, Nique Clifford will be in New York. He'll be in the green room for the draft. Got a really good chance to be the highest drafted player in CSU basketball history, at least in the modern era. Bill Green was taken 8th overall by the Celtics in 1963. But as far as, the modern era post-ABA merger, Jason Smith, the high watermark at 20th back in 2007. Roddy was 22nd, I believe, a couple years ago with Memphis. A lot of the mocks have him in that 15 to 25 range. He's pretty universally projected as a top 15 to 20 prospect. But, just because you're a top to 15 or you're a top 15 to 20 guy on somebody's board doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go in that range. Some of it's based on positional need. If team's got a bunch of wings, they're not going to be necessarily interested in Nique. For instance, is Orlando now out of the Nique sweepstakes after making that big move for Desmond Bane? Probably. I mean, he basically fills the role that Nique would have had. They could still use more 3-point shooting. So maybe, if he were to fall, he could be somebody that Nique, or he could be someone that Orlando targets in this process. Sorry, I got tongue-tied there. But given that they don't have that pick in the 15 to 25 range anymore, I kind of doubt it. Some picks to keep an eye on. Atlanta at 13. That's probably the earliest he would go, would be that 13-14 range. I do think he'd be a good fit with the Hawks as well. 15 to Oklahoma City. As a Nuggets fan, would kill me. As a CSU guy, to have a top 15 pick, I would love that. I also think it would be a perfect place for Nique to have success, somewhere where he's the 3rd or 4th option offensively, but is able to make an impact on the glass and defensively, and can create a little bit for you. He's not going to have the same role he had at CSU, obviously, but he does have the ability to create for himself or for others. Put the ball on the floor, get to that mid-range spot, or get to the hoop. His explosiveness is obviously a big selling point. 17 at Minnesota, similar deal. Don't love it as a Nuggets fan. Like it for Nique individually, though. I think it'd be a good fit. I think he fits into well to what they do well. Brooklyn at 19, Miami at 20, and then if he were to fall out of the 20, basically every pick between 22 and 27, you could kind of see him being a realistic option. We're not going to fly through as many mock drafts as we did last week because I think I went through like 9. It was a bit of overkill. But CBS, Matt Norlander, he has Nique yesterday, I believe, going 20th to Miami, as does Jeremy Woo of ESPN. So interesting how that's kind of progressed here over the last week or so. I'm sure all these guys are talking to the teams. I don't think any of these mocks are just pure guesses. I think they're pretty informed. ESPN has him going 23rd overall to New Orleans. So again, that 15 to 25 range is seemingly kind of where we're looking. We're going to play a clip here of Nique Clifford, but I guess I'm going to shout out a couple partners, and when we come back, we'll play that clip of Ali Farokhmanesh talking about Nique's growth, what he's seen from him in the last couple of years, and then we'll wrap up here over the last 15 minutes with some CSU football recruiting talk. Coors Light encourages you to choose a chill mindset. Never lose your chill. Life's going to test you. I joked about it last week, but I thought about 8 hours on highway, what is it, 55, I think, and then I-70 and 25. It had me ready to rip my hair out. Got home, everybody's cranky. The dog's in a bad mood. Girlfriend's in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. Got to go outside, take some deep breaths, do the little things, put yourself in the right mindset. Again, you don't want to lose your chill. It never helps anything. I can have a bit of a temper. I can be a hothead. I'll admit it. I'm the first to say it. But I'm constantly working on it, and you should too. Put yourself in that right state of mind, then, reward yourself. Kick back, chill, crack open an ice cold Coors Light when the mountains turn blue. Cold as the Rockies, Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness, perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you're hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma or the Land Cruiser, both iconic in their own way. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. Toyota, a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. All right. I've talked a lot in recent weeks about why I'm so high on Nique's potential in the NBA. I think he has a really strong opportunity to be the most tenured, Ram in the NBA by the time it's all done. I just think he's a perfect fit for what modern basketball is. I think his positional versatility is huge. I think the ability to switch multiple positions defensively in particular is such a strong selling point. Obviously, one of the best defensive rebounders I've ever seen, maybe the best defensive rebounder sub 6'8" I've ever seen in my life. Just a really mature and unselfish individual who's put in the work. He's done the little things, he's every little thing he could have nitpicked the last couple of years. He's put the work in, and it would shock me unless he just landed in a train wreck of a situation, which that's always something you got to factor in. It doesn't matter how good someone is. If they land in a bad system, if they land in a spot where they're not going to be set up to succeed, like there could be a lot of obstacles along the way. But I'm really high on Nique's potential as an NBA prospect. I just think the shot making has gone through the roof. I think he's an underrated playmaker. He's somebody that can create for others. And I think playing alongside Isaiah really brought that out of him. You go back and you look at his high school evaluation, and then he did flash it. I don't think much happened in Boulder to progress his game. But I thought when he got to CSU, what the staff was able to do to bring the best out of him and the work he was able to do individually to put himself in this position is pretty remarkable. But here's Ali Farokhmanesh at yesterday's practice, kind of giving a few thoughts on Nique. Again, my apologies for some of the background noise, but I do think you'll enjoy what Ali had to say on Nique's growth and just why he's going to fit into the NBA so well.
You mentioned Nique, obviously big week for him next week. Do you have like a favorite aha moment where it was like, oh, this guy's different? With Nique from when 2 years ago when he came in the door to now.
I just think his ability to be in the passing lane, get deflections, make plays like that. When he would drive and go dunk on the rim, get deflections, like he'd be closing out to somebody, you got a wide open three, and also think it's a deflection on that three. It was those moments that you were like, it's just different. There's not a lot of guys that can do the things that he can do. And we guys like that on our roster right now too.
How much different is Nique from 2 years ago when he walked in for these first practices?
Drastically. And you can go back to our staff. We didn't think he was going to start that summer. It was we didn't know Josiah was in the late and Nique. And honestly, we debated all the time. We weren't sure what the three will start. And there was days it was Josiah and Jalen. Other days it was Nique and Jalen, or Josiah and Nique. So we honestly had no idea. And we took it though. I'll give him a ton of credit the way he bought into his development, bought into how he was developing. He stuck to that process, and Nique, that from the moment he even got here, he still had that belief in him. He was building his confidence back up, getting him back to like, let's be intentional with how we work. And we did all of it. There's a reason why he's where he is.
He can't control where he gets drafted next week, but once he gets drafted, what about Nique do you think is going to lead him to having success at the next level?
His humility. He's one of the rare guys who. All the superstars we've ever had have that ignorant confidence in themselves, where it's like, you really shouldn't have this confidence, but you do. And he has that. but then he also has the humility to understand, like, I love where I'm at, I am where my feet are, but I know I can take that next step and get better, even though I'm a first-round draft pick. And I think that's what made him so good here, even coming back after going through that process. I think it's hard to go through that NBA process, come back to college, and really dive into the things you got to get better at, and he did it. And that's why I know when he takes that next step in the NBA, he's going to have that same mindset of, like, this is not an arrival point, it's a launching pad.
Even though he's changed a lot as a player since you originally started recruiting him out of high school, do you still see that same kid that you met in his parents' living room when he was 16, 17 years old?
Oh yeah, he's still goofy. He's still you can still joke with him. He's still all smiles. He's still that same little kid that I met at Vanguard High School. You know, in a lot of different ways. He's just more mature, more athletic, and can average 22 points a game now.
All right, shout out to Ali, shout out to CSU for that availability. I know a lot of background noise there, but I'll be going pretty in-depth on the written side. Make sure you check that out. Great time to become a DNVR diehard. If not, I just saw a tweet from John Gruden, got the CSU football care package. Only a little bit jealous. Well, what's your boy got to do to get hooked up with some CSU gear, other than talk about the program more than anybody in the world and host the only, daily CSU podcast in the world. Anyways, let's get into some recruiting stuff before we get out of here. I have some questions in the Toyota chat I'll get to at the end regarding Texas State, media deal, all that fun stuff. But if you missed it, and we'll kind of go more in depth tomorrow on this recruiting class as it comes together for CSU. But they did pick up a commitment from a top local recruit in Atticus Tillman, 6'2", 170-pound safety out of Arvada West. He is a 3-star prospect, number 18 prospect in the state of Colorado, according to 247. Coming off of a nice season with 40 tackles, 11 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. His offers from New Mexico State, Navy, Bowling Green, Georgia State, and Portland State. This is a nice cycle for recruits coming out of the state. I talked about last year when CSU didn't sign any kids out of Colorado, and you saw some of the predictable overreactions online, how it's going to be a year-to-year thing. You do want to have a local presence. Don't get me wrong. It's important, particularly for a G5 state school, like having those guys that are going to be just inherently a little bit more invested, maybe have a little bit more reason to stick around. That's something you want to lean into when possible, but you can't recruit locally just for the sake of recruiting locally. You've got to be able to recruit the right type of guys that are going to translate. And to quote Jane Orvell, you want to fish where the fish are. And that's why you're going to have a strong presence in Southern California, in Texas. They've been pretty heavy in Georgia this year, which I wonder if that has to do with the addition of Alex Collins and kind of some of his ties to the South, given his time at Ole Miss. But when there are guys out of Colorado that are going to translate, you certainly want to try to land them if you're CSU. And if you go and you look at the top 20 kids coming out of Colorado, this cycle, CSU offered damn near all of them. I believe they did offer all of the players currently listed in the top 10. Tillman, in particular, is somebody who I think is a perfect fit, flying under the radar a little bit, doesn't have the recruiting interests of some of these other guys in the top 20. It's tough if you're CSU to out-recruit, USC and some of the Big Ten schools that have been in on some of these kids. Kansas State's been really active in Colorado the last couple of years, and that's always going to be an uphill battle. And a lot of those kids, when they have the options to go elsewhere, regardless of what's happening at CSU, a lot of those kids are going to do so. The difference between now and, say, during the early 2000s, where that was still the case, you had some success going under Sonny, so you probably landed more of those top local recruits than you have the last 20-ish years or so. But in the portal era, obviously, there's always the possibility of things coming full circle and those guys leaving the state, finding out the grass wasn't necessarily greener elsewhere, and then wanting to come back to CSU and have a place they can land where they're comfortable, where they have those established relationships. And I think that's a big strength for CSU. That needs to be the hope with some of these kids that ultimately do get away, because a lot of them are probably going to hit the portal at some point. But you do want to be able to land some of them out of high school as well. And Atticus Tillman, I love his production, 40 tackles, 3 picks, 11 PBU. And Jeffco is saying something. Those offenses, as somebody who grew up in Jeffco, follows it pretty consistently.
not a lot of top quarterback prospects coming out of that league. Typically, the best teams are run heavy. You know, they're putting the ball on the ground. You know, Columbine is obviously the biggest example, but even like when Pomona had some success and Bear Creek back in the day. Bear Creek, I guess, under Tom Thinnell for a long time did kind of throw the ball a lot more than some of those other schools, but A-West, they've got a running back who's committed to Navy. Like you're going to see a lot of running the football on Jeffco. So to him to have that type of production, that's intriguing. He moves really well. He's got a good frame. He's only going to get bigger and stronger from here. Atticus Tillman is somebody who I think has great potential and is the exact type of local recruit that you want to be in on if you are CSU. Brace with me here. The Rams, another guy that they most certainly want to be in on, and they're actually hosting him this weekend, the top recruit for Colorado in the 2026 cycle. I'm all but certainly going to butcher this name pronunciation. I tried to find videos to verify, no luck, but we're going to try here. Tufanua Ionatana Umu-Cais. I believe that's my best guess on it. He is a 4-star defensive tackle out of Cherry Creek High School, 6'3", 307 pounds. He's already a 3-year starter for what is the best football program in the state. He's got 31 offers listed on 247 from all over the country. Schools like Tennessee out of the SEC, the Big Ten, very much interested in him based on who he has taken official visits to. You know, North Carolina, Washington, UCLA, Stanford, most recently visited CU and is now going to be at CSU this weekend. It does seem like he's more interested generally in staying in this part of the country, or the West Coast, I guess it'd be an easier way to phrase it. I will say North Carolina being in there is kind of an interesting wrinkle, you know, the chance to play for Bill Belichick, although I don't know if you guys listened to that Pablo Torre podcast on Jordan Hudson, the like 25-year-old or whatever that Bill is dating, but there's a lot of wrinkles to that, and it doesn't sound like UNC is exactly in the most stable position as a football program. They always are going to have the swag element. I mean, that Carolina blue, it just pops differently. But for CSU to be listed as warm, one of the schools that has reportedly a better chance in landing him, along with, you know, CU, UNC, UCLA, Washington, and Stanford, that's encouraging, and that's a testament to the consistent recruiting that CSU has done. Again, CSU's in on the right guys coming out of Colorado. It's just a matter of if they're going to want to stick around or not. He's had 180 tackles over the last 3 years, 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. He's somebody that moves really well despite that 300-pound frame. He's quick off the snap. He's bigger and stronger than everybody on the field, obviously, and he leans on that. There's not a lot of cuteness to his game. It's a lot of just him shucking dudes aside who never had a chance of blocking him in the first place. But to have that type of production, essentially average 60 total tackles a year, while basically getting double teamed every single snap, I mean, that shows what type of beast this kid is. He moves well laterally. He's got good God, it has been a struggle for me to speak today. He's got good closing speed for a big boy. There are a couple instances of him just torching a dude off the snap, bull rushing up the gut, and just consuming a quarterback. I mean, there's a lot to like there. You love the size. You can't teach that. Would be a huge pickup for CSU. I would say he would be the most significant commit of the class if the Rams were able to pull this off. To land a player of this caliber from Colorado, I mean, it could potentially be, you know, program changing. Like that's the type of kid that you've not been able to land in recent years, and it would speak volumes to kind of the work CSU has done from a local recruiting standpoint if they were able to pull it off. So keep your eyes open. We'll see how that visit goes this weekend. I'll certainly be hitting up all my sources. I'll be getting you guys as much information as I can. Before we get out of here, and I will say, because we might go a little bit over, if you're watching on TV, just head to thednvr.com. Here you can catch the last couple minutes of the show. If you're listening via other platforms, you're fine. You don't have to do anything. Mile High. I forgot about that, the overtime graphic. That was cool. I thought expansion news, Mile High Minute says in the Toyota chat, and media deal would be out by now. Seems like they're going to wait until the last minute. July 1st is when Texas State exit fee increases. Yeah, I mean, you have until the 1st. There's a lot of details behind the scene that are being worked out. You got to remember they're still in litigation for the buyout fees and the whole ordeal with the Mountain West. How much money they have to work with is a big determining factor in who the next member is going to be, as is who else is interested. You know, Texas State, and I'll talk about this more in detail tomorrow because we're bad out of time here. I've been pretty honest about it being an anticlimactic addition for me. It just doesn't move the needle. It's not a disastrous situation. You got the base of the league that you wanted. You'd be within an hour of Austin. It's a growing campus. They've got enrollment of about 40,000. They have increased investment in athletics, although they're still a long ways away from the rest of the Pac-12. They don't do a ton for me. Like, I know they've had some success in football of late. To me, and this probably comes down to my personal biases more than like a business decision, I would rather have New Mexico. Like, give me UNM hoops in the pit over this. But the thing is you get access to Texas, and assuming that you extend the invite before July 1st, you get them for $5 million. That doubles to $10 million if it were to be after July 1st, but even so, that's a bargain compared to Memphis or Tulane, who you would have to spend $25 million to get out of the AAC. The next move isn't necessarily the last move. You've got to find that 8th football member. There's more moves to come down the line. You've got to set yourself up basically for 20 and 30 and beyond. And that's why, like, if it does ultimately end up being Texas State, do I view that as like a massive win for the league? Not really, but I understand the logic behind it. You get into Texas, they're affordable, and you fill out your football league, which is ultimately something you have to get done if this is going to work out. Maybe you're also able to get Memphis as a football only member, and you get a basketball scheduling agreement. You know, Memphis and UConn, you've seen that reported. If you add that into the equation and factor in somebody like St. Mary's as, you know, a basketball only or Olympic sports only member on a discount, like, then all of a sudden it starts feeling like a win to me again. If the only move between now and 2030 is Texas State, meh. You know, I feel really good about the rest of the league. I'd understand the logic behind it, but it just wouldn't do much for me. That's where I'm at with all of this. Don't panic. We are going to get a resolution, but again, it's a lot of things. It's still kind of contingent on, well, we'll take Texas State if we have this much money to work on, depending on what happens here with litigation. But if, you know, UConn were to be on board and willing to, you know, pay their way out, we'd rather have them. So, like, a lot of these secondary conversations are going to be going on behind the scenes. There's really no true reason you need the deal in place before the deadline. Like, it doesn't really matter what, you know, we're not playing games anytime soon. This is for the 2026 schedule, so it's not like it impacts this fall. Other than, like, all of us just being impatient and tired of debating the hypotheticals, like, it really doesn't matter. I wouldn't panic or anything like that. I guess that's what I'm saying. The deal's going to get done. The media projections have them anywhere from an $8 to $12 million range, which would be twice as much as they're getting in the Mountain West, and certainly more than the future Mountain West is going to get without brands like Boise State and San Diego State. I think 10 million is really what I'm hoping for. If you can get to 10, I just think that number feels undoubtedly like a win. If it's more like 8, you still doubled your money. So, like, that is a win, but with what you're potentially spending to make that happen, you could point out, you know, if you're being cynical, was that really worth it? Maybe. But the reality is this is the side that you want to be on. This is the side of the fence. You want to be with Gonzaga. You want to be with Boise State. You want to be with San Diego State, Utah, Fresno, whatever, but mostly those other brands. Obviously, Washington State and Oregon State, you don't want to be playing Northern Illinois in football, and Nevada and Air Force and UNLV being, you know, some of the faces of your league. Like, very clearly, they're associated with the right brands in this ever-changing landscape of college athletics. Anybody saying otherwise is being ignorant or is probably biased, you know, because they are a fan of one of those Mountain West schools that got left behind. I've been honest that this Pac-12 isn't going to be the Pac-12 of old. We get that, but you're just trying to do anything to remain relevant. You're betting on yourself. You're taking, admittedly, a gamble, in hopes of being able to reach that next level as an athletic department, to swim in the different types of waters as a football program, to be the type of athletic department we've all prayed for, we've all envisioned, over the years. But it does take some willingness to be bold. And I've been pretty critical of schools like Memphis not being willing to spend the money. I understand not wanting to have to shuttle your Olympic sports across the country. That gets a little wonky, and that's where I am more open to the possibility of a football-only membership, assuming that you also get the basketball scheduling agreement. Like in that scenario, they've got to be playing 3 to 4 Pac-12 teams, in their non-conference schedule. If it's like 1 or 2 a year, I don't think that's that great of a deal on the Pac-12 side. Have fun in the American, playing whoever the fuck is in that league these days. I don't even know. It's been gutted so much, but you get the point. That's all I've got for you guys today. Much love to everybody rocking with us. We'll be back live tomorrow morning. We'll talk CSU football recruiting again. I'll get some guests on here over the next week. Always proud to be. Shout out to Kale, a super producer, making it happen behind the scenes. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off your first order. Much love, y'all. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.